Forward with Truth.
Welcome back to Forward with Truth podcast. We have here Alderman Paul Porter, former Mayor of Lisburn.
Humble Mayor,
the most humble Mayor that there's ever been, and a good friend of mine for many, many years. So, should we leave Christianity at the door when we enter politics? Or does it form us, does it shape us, and help us become better representatives of the people? Why do so many working class loyalists feel unheard, unrepresented, and culturally under siege in their own communities? And what happens when private housing contracts and flawed immigration policy collide with an already struggling local families, causing rents to soar and resentment to quietly boil beneath the surface? Today we're joined with Alderman Paul Porter, long-serving DUP councillor, a man of deep Christian conviction, and somebody who's walked the path of working-class loyalism with integrity and courage. We'll be talking about faith, politics, identity, and challenges faced by loyalist communities today. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nathan. It's nice to be on. I've seen it on YouTube and I've seen it on Facebook, and yeah, I say thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, you're very welcome. So, Paul, let's begin with something foundational. Tell us just a bit about your family background and how you came to faith in Christ.
Yeah, well, I was brought up in a wee village called Ravarnet, just outside Lisburn. I say, and I'm one of these people that hate the word privilege, especially when it comes to a group of individuals, because within that group there's also individuals. But the only thing I call real privilege was being brought up in a Christian home. I had a mum and dad who were very godly. I wouldn't say very strict, but also we all knew where the boundaries were, but also very loving and very supportive. And from an early age, I remember prayer meetings and different things my mum and dad were doing, and also the wee mission hall in Ravarnet. They were heavily involved in that as well. So it was just something you're brought up in. And as well as that, we were also brought up in regards to my brothers in the local band as well, Canal and Flute Band. I'm sure there's ones out listening there will know Canal, still going strong, I might add. So somebody asked me years ago, you've invented a new word, what's your political beliefs? And I remember thinking about it once. It says, I'm a Christian loyalist. Somebody says, what do you mean by that? I says, well, my mum and dad didn't mind us putting flags up and painting curbs as long as we didn't do it on a Sunday. And if that makes sense, hopefully it does, in regards to, I was brought up in a very godly, very respectful home, but also a home that wasn't afraid of our culture and our heritage as well. Yeah. And I count that a true blessing in regards to, and that's one of the true blessings I've had through my life in regards to the stable and the start of my life started off very well because of the grounding that my mum and dad give us.
Yeah. And, you say you shared your mum and dad became strong Christians, and how did that example shape your life? And it's funny, I remember you telling stories about how your dad would do evangelism across the divide, as it were. So he was a very open man when it came to sharing his faith. For him, culture didn't really matter, isn't that right?
My dad used to go to Cross McGlen and give out tracts and witness to the residents up there. He used to go down to Poglass and Trimmick as well, and actually I believe it was Dairy Farm, used to sit there and give out leaflets and stuff. And I will tell you a funny story, but I just let you know how the gospel in Northern Ireland is just not the same as the gospel somewhere else. My dad was in Cross McGlen and he was seeing these British troops coming over to speak to him. And after that left, this boy takes a beeline for him and with an angry face, and my dad said, oh dear, what's going to happen? And the boy came over and says, you're not here for them, you're here for us. So it sort of got the impression my dad said that he didn't mind my dad giving tracts out, just didn't want the Brits to be saved. And I said in a jest, but it also shows you in regards to he was well received, well received. Yeah. And in regards to, and he did say for many times, he says, almost as if the respect they had for religion was greater, even if they didn't always agree with the religion that my dad was trying to preach and Christ crucified. But I remember for a few years there are different ones getting saved in Cross McGlen and down Trimmick and Poglass because of his ministry, and I know it was something he was very, very thankful for. Yeah.
So let's talk about your entry into politics. You were first elected into Lisburn in 2001, is that right?
Yep, 2001. Done your research well, Nathan?
Yes, yeah. took a lot of digging. So what motivated you to run?
Well, actually, I was one of these ones. I was brought up in, Ravarnet, left school at 16. I never thought politics would be mine. And I remember saying, anybody listening here will know Edwin Poots. a personal close friend of mine and somebody I actually currently work for. But I remember, like, years ago, it was just about 2000, maybe 1999, saying to Ed when I was thinking of running, looking for encouragement, and I asked him, do you think I'll be able to do it? And his lovely words of encouragement was, time will tell. As me and you both know, Edwin, that's the only encouragement you're going to get. I do, yes, but at that time I wasn't quite sure. I didn't think politics was me. I didn't think I was smart enough for politics, as I'm sure anybody growing up in the loyalist working class areas, and I called Reformed, that's what it was. Sometimes you do, sometimes you look at TV, you look at people speaking publicly, and you wonder it was for you. But to be fair to you, it was something that I got involved in, joined the DUP, got friends, especially locally, and Edwin was one of, I would say, my mentors, to be fair to you, and prayed about it, spoke to my lovely wife Nicola, who agreed that she wanted to see less of me and allowed me to put my name forward, and thankfully in 2001 I got elected for the first time, and I've been there ever since.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, you say that you weren't sure you were smart enough, but then you got elected and you met everybody and you realised...
well, I met you, Nathan, and she made sure.
That's right.
I'm only joking.
That's it. So, no, but that's it, isn't it? Like, but what is it like... So what was it like stepping into that role as a working class lad from Ravarnet and a Christian and a loyalist? What was that like?
Well, it was strange because it sounds silly. My idea was you're there to empty bins, maybe get the odd pothole fixed. And I remember the first meeting I had with Edwin was actually in Ulster Community Group, and they were looking at a £1.4 million community centre. And they already secured this 2001. That's now the Laganview Centre. Anybody wants to Google it, it's a wonderful centre. But I remember coming out of that meeting in 2001 and going to Edwin, I'm here to empty bins. So I learned very quickly that while you had your normal day-to-day constituency work, it was also about how can you try to promote, progress and deliver for the communities that you represent. Isn't always easy, because remember at that time there was only 5 DUP councillors, and at that time the idea of working in loyalist working class areas by some unions sadly wasn't something that wasn't that well supported. But despite that we kept ploughed on, and as you've seen over the last 21 years we've been able to deliver, 24 years, been able to deliver, I believe, a significant amount for our communities in Lisburn and Castlereagh.
You then got involved in supporting the local communities, as you say. So what would you say, what are the achievements that you would say in those 25 years that you're most proud of? I know Christians were not meant to be proud, but you're most satisfied by?
Yeah, well, first of all, I remember whenever we were at the opening of, at the privileged open Hill Hall Community Centre, and I remember a good friend of mine, Francie, who's a good community worker, said to me, he says, thank you for working with us whenever a lot of people didn't want to. But I remember actually saying, thank you for working with us. Because at the end of the day, it does need a partnership. Nothing will be done in isolation. So anything I've been privileged to play a small part on, it's only because we've a great community sector, sporting sector out there who are willing to do the hard yards. Because at the end of the day, nothing isn't easy. I can tell you, delivering for communities isn't easy.
No.
It isn't. I mean, it takes challenges. It also takes you to be willing to accept that you're not always going to win the battles on the day. But I do welcome, I don't know many community centres involved in, say, Laganview, I was the privilege of working on, the new youth centre in Ulster as well. One of my biggest, say, achievements, too strong a word, but projects that I loved working on was the LARC in Wallace Avenue, which is a day centre for special needs. I was lucky to chair the redevelopment of that. That was a time in 2001, whenever I was first elected, I had a group of ladies who came to myself and Edwin and gave off pocketfuls that the trust wanted to sell land for housing. This is directly in front of a special needs adult centre, and these severely needs in regards to adults with learning disabilities. And instead of them getting money, we ended up getting to spend 3.5 million. And any time I drive by it or anybody goes into it, I do have some sort of I do say to myself, you know what, a job well done. But that was done with working with carers, and also working with the trust, who finally realised that we weren't going away. And more importantly, then agreed to do the funding that was necessary. And I do believe it's a state of the art in Ireland and probably across the UK as a centre for adults with learning disabilities. I'm saddened that it hasn't been replicated more throughout Northern Ireland in regards to other centres, but it is something I'm very proud of, as well as my work in the loyalist working class areas. I've been involved in several community centres in Balmackay, Soaring, Hill Hall, St. Eden, and Mewn, where I live, in regards to Low Road as well. There's a new centre going to be open too. So it's been a lot of work over the last 25 years, but it's a job, I believe, well done, and also great encouragement as well.
I suppose that with that experience in working with loyalist working class areas and and working class areas, I suppose, that aren't loyalists too. In Lisburn.
I work across the board.
And you see, and you've seen a lot of things that have happened recently in working class areas. So one of the big issues that you've been raising recently and consistently, so let's start here. It's an organisation called Mears, and it's about migration, immigration, housing pressure. So for those that don't know, what is Mears? What is Mears Group? How did you come across this issue initially?
Before you need to start that, also, like to say, I also work in South Belfast for Edwin Poots. I work in Sandy Row, so I'm also, as well as being a councillor for areas like Ballincash, O'Byrne, Manor Park, right across, I'm also working in South Belfast. That is a great need and also great housing pressure. So that frames where I come from as well. But also, I think you also need to realise that, and sometimes I think unionist communities sometimes struggle with this. We may be years out from we call it the Belfast Agreement, but some of our communities are still struggling in regards to the legacy of the past and also the legacy of the Troubles. I think some people in government don't maybe understand or fully understand in regards to that, especially in social deprivation, educational achievement, lack of housing. So you've got all this in the mix. And then about 4.5 years ago, I was asked to attend a meeting. The council asked me to attend, a couple of councillors, just because of the area I represent, with Home Office officials, housing executive, and a group, Mears, I'd never heard of, to be fair to a representative from Mears. And it's just a housing company that is a multi-million in regards to, in England. They do a lot of housing, especially for asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, whatever word you want to use for that. And I remember at that meeting they outlined their wonderful plans in regards to how they were going to move people out of hotels in the community. Now remember, these aren't people who had got legal status. These are people that came here either across from Ireland or came over in the boats who were asylum seekers or trying to get at. And I sat and listened, and they said they were going to buy all these properties in Lisburn and South Belfast or rent properties. And I stopped them in the middle of it.
So just to be clear, you're talking about private
landlords, yeah.
Okay.
So the idea was that I think at that time there was about 2,500 hotels.
Yeah.
That's roughly, probably about 20 hotels. Don't quote me on those figures, but there was a lot in regards to. And again, I know there was the great and good were saying it's disgraceful to people in hotels, despite us having thousands on waiting list who don't have a house. But in regards to this issue, there was the great and good saying they shouldn't be in hotels, getting their food paid for them and all that sort of stuff. So there was a big push to take away hotels and put them in the community. So a part of this was the Home Office would fund Mears to either purchase or enter into long-term rental agreements with landlords. Now remember, whenever you're rental agreements, as a landlord, the best thing you would have is long-term tenure. And if that's being written by the government, it's very ludicrous, it's very, it's something that I know landlords are going to want to do, because if you've got a long-term contract, maybe 4 or 5 years with the government, it doesn't matter who the person's in. Because remember, this is Mears property, it's not the individual you're doing the rental with, okay? So at that meeting they talked about how they're going to either buy or rent properties in Lisburn, as well as Belfast, South Belfast in particular. And I remember at that meeting saying very clear, because I work in housing on a daily basis, I know the chronic waiting list there is, especially in many loyalist working class areas. I mean, it's horrendous in regards to people who are in private rentals, people who are in hotels, and these are people who live here, or from here. And I remember stopping the person halfway through the conversation. I says, I don't remember all these empty properties being available in Lisburn. I says, but secondly, can you assure me that a landlord won't make somebody homeless so that you will make somebody and give them a home who don't have any legal status here? And the housing sector was there as well. And I remember saying to them, I says, this is going to have a massive impact on those on the waiting list. And they couldn't answer the question, and more importantly, they couldn't give me the assurance that I've sought. So that's the reason why this issue, in case anybody's listening and wondering why does he talk about Mears? This has been a campaign, I think I was probably one of the first politicians to actually raise the issue of Mears, and it's over 4.5, 5 years ago. It's because at that meeting I foresee the problems we're having now, because you can't go into a very limited market, offer higher rents, make people homeless. Then what will happen is even the landlords that aren't doing that, their prices are going to go up, because Mears will be setting the price for what And that's the problem we have now. First of all, there's a demand issue because Mears have bought or rented all these properties.
Well look, before we sort of go and explain the consequences of that, I sort of want to find out a bit more about the situation. So what you're saying is that Mears is coming in, and it's funded by the Home Office, if I'm correct?
Mears are the housing, don't know if it's charity, but housing, we call it association in England and Northern Ireland that do a lot of what they call it asylum seeker contracts.
Okay.
So in regards to hotels and in regards to housing and stuff, and remember these are asylum seekers, not people who have legal status.
Yeah.
And their job is to look after them when they're there.
So what they're doing is they're buying up
or renting.
They're buying up rent or so they're buying up properties, or they're renting out to private landlords.
Yep.
Right. Meaning that asylum seekers can get housed.
Yeah.
But this isn't offered to people from this country.
It's worse. Because, let's face it, and it may not be Mears making the person homeless, because remember, it'll be the landlord who owns the property.
Right.
And just say the year's up in regards to somebody's lease, and they're told, I'm selling the property or I'm moving on, and the lease is not restored. Then they enter into an agreement with Mears Housing, and then Mears then dictate who then goes into that property, either through a lease or they buy the property.
Okay.
So if it was just an issue of somebody else getting that house, my contention has been, that's the reason why I've called for an inquiry from the start, is this policy not only is building somebody up, sadly it's knocking a lot of our own communities down. They're actually making people homeless because they're not, these properties are sitting empty. So for them to actually buy these properties and to rent these properties, vast majority of times there's been somebody in those properties who have had to be made homeless. Now I'm not saying forcefully, because it could be the end of their contract.
Yeah.
As you know yourself, it's normally a yearly contract people sign for rental accommodation, to be fair to you. But I've heard stories of landlords, not just one properties. Like the last story I heard about 65 properties I had, and they were working with Mears for them to purchase or rent it. And remember, you take about a lot of properties in one area, it makes a massive difference. Remember, a lot of the people who are in these rented properties are only here for a reason, because they can't get housed without incentive. And they maybe buy a rented property in a local area until they're housed. So, and a lot of times when they went to a rental property, they've been through hell to get there.
Yeah.
Maybe marital breakdown, financial hardship, could be mental health, could be a lot of reasons why in regards to you've had to seek and need a new home. So you went through that hole and you're sitting there in a rental property, and all of a sudden you've been asked to leave or your contract hasn't been restored. And the only reason for that, not because you're a bad tenant, not because you didn't pay. Simple reason is, I believe, a lot of the times, is because of the lucrative contracts that Mears were offering. And I'm not believing landlords per se, because if you're going to get a long-term tenure at a very affordable price, and I'm led to believe that also...
But it's the incentive.
It's the incentive there. But also, it's not only the incentive. My issue from the outset of us is the impact. And sadly, because of the issue we're dealing with, nobody wanted to listen about the impact on my communities. And when I say my communities, this is not a loyalist thing. This is communities in Northern Ireland, and more importantly, as you'll find later on, this is about those areas that have high deprivation, that have been asked to suffer the most in this whole policy.
Well, given the fact that we've had, in a lot of areas, 3,000 people in housing stress on a waiting list, right? Why could Mears not have done this for them?
Well, sorry, you keep going to Mears. Mears are a tool.
Yeah.
The question I have to ask is, amazing how we all of a sudden have a crisis at our border because illegal immigrants come in. And it's amazing money's not an issue. They can go into contracts, they can contract with Mears to deliver all this housing.
Yeah.
Well, see, before this crisis broke at our borders, we had thousands on our waiting list.
So
why was the Home Office not able to throw those millions? So these properties were still here. We could have entered into contracts and Mears said, the ones on the waiting list, we'll try to have a secure tenure to house them. And I think that's the issue. First of all, people who have been affected by the policy. And that's why I want to inquire. Because I don't know the impact of this policy. It's like when you see the impacts. But at the end of the day, that's why I've asked for an inquiry. But secondly, in regards to, for a lot of local families and individuals, why was my circumstances not important enough for the Home Office to come in and spend the millions of pounds you've spent. So it's not enough money being spent on somebody else. What I keep saying is, just to pick somebody else up shouldn't mean you have to knock somebody else down. And I believe this policy of the Home Office in regards to buying and renting properties has a massive impact of first increasing rents across the board, even if they're not Mears properties. Secondly, making people homeless, because these landlords have to do agreement, and a lot of these people already had tenants in their properties. And secondly, supply and demand. The demand at the minute, because remember, see, if anybody works in the housing executive, what happens is you apply to get a house. Depending on your points will depend amount of time.
I think we should maybe say as well, because there'll be Americans listening in, there'll be people maybe from England and Scotland. For England and Scotland, this is a council house. Okay, the housing executive is effectively the council.
And this is happening in England as well.
Yeah, same thing's happening in England. And for people in the United States, this is social housing. This is about social housing. It's about state-provided housing. Yeah. That's right. So I just think it's important to state that.
So whatever you present yourself as, whether you lost your job, you've been asked to leave your home, for whatever the circumstances, you need accommodation.
Sure.
You present yourself as being homeless to the housing executive.
Sure.
And in their job as best they can, and I mean, there's chronic waiting lists. And they use the private rental sector as a massive way of dealing with the numbers they have to try while they're waiting. Because the housing executive they actually enter contracts with landlords, okay, in regards to, and they're single lets are called. So the idea is that you sit in a rental property until the property comes available. Well, first of all, you're making more people homeless by buying up those properties.
Yeah.
Secondly, supply and demand. And then if you're, like, I work in South Belfast, and we have a lot of wonderful nurses who have came from the Philippines, different places. They're renting properties in South Belfast. The property prices in South Belfast has went through the roof. There's a lot of reasons for that. But supply and demand has to be one of the biggest ones. And if you ask me, the reason why that is because so many properties have been purchased or rented through the Mears project, the Home Office project, which automatically then, even if you're not going to enter the contract, they're setting the rate of rent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nurses, I mean, as regards to are struggling. We had one who come into our office, and it went from, I think it was 600 quid to 1,200 quid of a rise of rent. I think that was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And like that's just unbelievable.
I'm hearing of some South Belfast 2-bedroom flats going for £2,000.
Yeah, like that's...
You know,
and then you've got the issue of HMOs in regards, for anybody who doesn't understand that, houses have multiple occupancy. So instead of you giving the house to a family and getting one rent, you'll try to split it up into 4, 5, 12 units, whatever you can get away with, and then you'll charge individually as well. And Mears also are heavily involved in that as well. So, as you know, like, this is a major issue, and sadly the press and the media, despite my best efforts, do not want to talk about it. Like I've spoken to researchers on BBC, all the press, and I think it's because of the issue we're dealing with. If this had, just say this had happened, on a serious note, just say the housing sector went into Shankill or Poglass, just using that as a scenario, and said, by the way, we're going to buy 700 houses and make you homeless, and then just say this is Poglass, and we're going to bring residents from Shankill down and give them to them. Sinn Féin, rightfully so, would be out protesting, and I would be protesting with them. But that's what's happened over the last 4 years. All this housing stock has been purchased, rented, with the full backing of the Home Office. And nobody wants to see what the impact of this is. No. And many local families have been affected. But more importantly, the overall issue of private rental, what that impact as well is. And the only reason why nobody wants to talk about it is because we're dealing with asylum seekers. And for whatever reason, that issue seems to be something that the media want to run away with.
The housing executive, what did they say about this?
Well, the reason why I've got so agitated, and anybody knows me in the council knows this is an issue that, and in my own party, to be fair to you, because I've spoken to our minister, I've spoken to anybody who wants to listen to me, and a big shout out to Johnny Buckley, I know has also been hammering this issue, and I thank him for all the support. To be fair to you, and this is what brought it home to me, because I at a council meeting, I think it was last year before, the chief executive, the housing executive, was at a meeting, and while I know there's an issue, because nobody wants to look at it, it's hard to quantify what the issue is. And I remember raising the issue to the chief executive in a public meeting, and everybody wants to see her answers. There's Belfast Live covered, just put my name in and just type Mears Housing, and you'll see the response. I asked a simple question, is what impact was Mears Housing having on the housing market and homeless figures and the rental prices. And I was shocked by the honesty of the Chief Executive, and I commend her for her honesty in regards to this issue. And she said an amazing figure. Just before COVID, the figures in regards to families presenting themselves as being homeless was somewhere in the region of 3,000. Mm-hmm. The current figure over a year ago was almost 11,000. And she also believed that the number one issue that those families said landlords leaving the market. Now, I don't know whether they're leaving the market for Mears. I'm sure they're not all, because a lot of people sell their properties, financial hardship, move on. But you can't tell me the correlation directly between, and the Chief Executive did say that they actually had issues with Mears and they had to meet them. Because actually the issue that they had is not only was it the impact they believe in making people homeless, but secondly, as scary is, they actually said as soon as somebody got legal status, they were then kicking them out of the homes.
Right, okay.
Because remember, Mears' job is to look after legal immigrants. So as soon as we went through the process...
Or people who are being processed.
Yes, well, asylum seekers, whatever. I don't get facts and words in regards to... All I'm trying to say is... And she said because they weren't given enough time in regards to... This is in a public meeting in regards to... And she said there's also about price of rents and stuff as well, and also making it harder for them then to house people. But she did say, well, there's been no research done. Her words, and this was the scary thing, says, you can't have a portfolio the size of Mears and not have a massive impact.
Yeah.
And sadly, nobody wants to look at this issue. Because like I've raised it at the council meeting. I've asked for an investigation by the Home Office to see the impact of this policy. Because it's not just about Northern Ireland. This policy has been implemented in the UK as well.
Across the whole UK?
Well, so it doesn't take rocket science. If you've already got massive waiting list, you rely heavily on rental properties to deal with that while people are being processed to get housed. I'm talking about people who live here, who have legal status here. And then in the mix of that, you then offer millions to buy that limited property. You make people homeless, then you automatically make things worse in regards to the waiting list. And then, to make it worse, it looks as if it's not being done right across Northern Ireland. They've targeted in certain areas.
Well,
and that's another...
we'll talk about the targeting in 1 second, right? So what is happening here is, and I'm just to get this absolutely right, the housing executive said that given the size of the portfolio, and we're not sure exactly how big.
They won't tell us.
They won't tell. They won't tell how big the portfolio is, okay? But it's likely in the thousands.
Well, but we don't know. My figure is they're currently 2,400 in what I would call HMOs, houses and flats.
Okay, so
you need to divide that by 3, because the HMOs, you're still looking about... And I'm talking about Northern Ireland, I'm not talking about the UK.
Yeah.
Thousands in the UK, absolutely right. In Northern Ireland, you're probably looking about... has to be a number in the region of 700 to 900. Can you imagine? And remember, this is not 700 to 900 in Northern Ireland. There's 700 to 900 in targeted areas, which makes it worse, which we'll get to in a minute.
Which we'll get into in a minute. So if you're thinking about that housing... And
it won't tell me, I'm just working on it. You're divided by 3.
Yeah. So when you think about that as a whole, and it's probably gone up, but in all probability. But the thing is, this explains why people can't get rental properties. They're being priced out of the market. You're in a situation where not just the public sector is being flooded, but the private sector housing. So people who are just trying to buy a house, not even buy a house, rent a house, cannot get. And then what happens is people aren't selling houses because a lot of people are saying, actually, I can make a bit more money if I rent this house to the state contractor. And
maybe get my house done up as well.
Yeah.
I'm told that happens as well. Again, that's just anecdotal, so I can't stand over that. That's just what I've been told by some other politicians. But again, I don't know, because Mears haven't.
But certainly, whether or not that is, whether or not it gets done up, it is true that there is...
Mears aren't responsible for the massive underinvestment in housing. That's happened for years.
Yeah.
But the question that I have is, the Home Office, and I told them 4.5 years ago, I told their officials the impact that this was going to have. So before they started this, I told Mears at that meeting 4.5, in case you wonder why I'm so passionate about this, it's not as if they didn't know.
Yeah.
I warned them 4.5 years ago. It doesn't take rocket science how this is going to impact the communities that I represent. I told them 4.5 years ago, And it's almost as if communities I represent really don't matter, and the impact in those communities don't matter. Because first of all, we're not going to research it. Secondly, we're not going to be told that many properties have been bought. Like I give shout out to Jim Shannon, because I asked Jim done on my behalf, wrote a freedom of information request in to the Home Office, and about Mears, how much contracts and many properties have. Even though it's public contracts, he said it's a matter for Mears. I know in regards to Belfast Live reporter, the only reporters actually willing to cover this, told me it wrote to Mears. And they said it's a Home Office issue. So like, it's almost as if there's a cloak of silence, and that's why I need the media, because they won't listen to me. So sadly, the media don't want to ask these questions either. So
the FOI couldn't be investigated because it was a private company, and it then...
And also, scarily, the Home Office says, we don't have that data. So hold on a wee minute. This is public money that you're funding. We'll talk about Mears. I'm sure they fund other organisations as well. And you're funding for hotels, houses to either buy or rent. And you can't tell me how many properties you have in Northern Ireland or what the postcodes are. You're writing checks here, but allegedly you don't hold that information. Like that's scary. To be fair to Jim, he keep pushing this, and and I've also, to be fair, Johnny Buckley on my behalf wrote OFM, DFM, and also the Minister as well in Stormont. But because Mears are a contract from the Home Office, that's how they're able not to answer these questions. But I will continue to ask it, even though very few sadly are listening.
So we'll now move on to the whole issue of postcodes, right? Because clearly, or zip codes as they'd be in America. So why is there this lack of transparency around postcodes selected and the decisions made? Why is there this?
Whenever I started my first concern 4.5 years ago, it was purely about those families being displaced.
Yes.
I mean this with all. Because I just assumed automatically you're going to buy properties, spread it across Northern Ireland to make sure the burden is spread evenly.
Yes.
And when I say burden, I'm sorry, there is a burden, especially if you're going to reduce the housing demand, housing availability, price rentals. But if we're all in this together, I do believe it makes it a wee bit easier for everybody to accept. But shockingly, I came across a Mears document, that had a list of the postcodes and the number of individuals. Now, it wasn't a list of the housing, but it was a number of individuals in each postcode that were either housed in housing, flats, or HMOs. And what was the biggest correlation in those figures? I couldn't believe it. What was it I find in regards to this? Is Mears' own document.
Deprivation, was it?
By far, whenever I looked at it, 85% of all the postcodes that they were using in regards to the number of individuals were areas of high deprivation. So how did the Home Office, how did Mears Housing think that, you know what, first of all, we're going to go through this process that's going to make people homeless, but we're going to also make sure it's intensified in certain areas. And not only that, those areas that, as I said at the start, are still struggling from the legacy of the Troubles. And I'm not talking about loyalist working class areas, I'm talking about nationalist working class areas as well, Republican working class areas as well. And sadly, none of their politicians seem to care. Like, I got up at the council meeting the other night and I said to Sinn Féin, your policy down south is very clear. There's centres in regards to housing immigration. Immigrants should not be in areas of high deprivation. Yet Mears Housing, I've been doing this for 4 years, and you don't want to talk about it. Not only that, you're in Belfast at rallies saying immigrants are welcome here, because they're not being welcomed in Northern Ireland. Let's be clear. What they're being is welcomed in pockets of areas of deprivation, which is having a massive impact in regards to community cohesion. Yeah. Also, these are the areas that demand heavily in regards to private rental properties.
Yeah.
Lack of housing. There's social issues in regards to schooling, health, doctors. You've got all that in the mix. And that's why I've asked for a full inquiry. Who in the right mind thought it was acceptable for this to be the case?
And what that does is it breaks down loyalist and Republican working class areas. Because the problem is people want to move near their family. You know, there's a lot of people in the city don't own cars. Yeah. Right, and I mean, Liberal policy is trying to ensure that nobody has a car, so people want to be closer to their family
and not fly.
Yeah, that's right, not fly, but also just they want to be near their family. They want support network, and they want to keep close to their their community, and they're being priced out and forced out by this policy.
And I can understand if your argument is, well, we need to try and keep it as Belfast-centric as possible.
Yes.
Because of all the service and stuff. I'm sorry, if you've had to cross over a dinghy, or you've crossed over Ireland, I know I have my issues with Ireland historically, but they're a lovely country. I don't understand why they would be in fear in regards to that. But you've come over here in fear. Sorry, this idea that you're not going to accept, sorry, if you help and support, you're going to take it where it's got and where it's bought. The question I'm asked is a very simple question, and again, I'm pleading with the media, and I mean this with all due respect, is why are you not asking questions in regard? Could you imagine if anyone or any housing charity said they were going to target socially deprived areas to take their resources away, and the media wouldn't be all over it like a rash? And the scary thing is, a document I had was a year and a half ago. I'd spoke to Mears directly, an official in Mears, and I says, maybe the new figures have a better spread. And I said, will you surprise those figures? They won't. So in regards to, and again I keep saying this in regards to, if they're not going to talk about it, and the press aren't going to hold their fire, it's up to politicians and the government to be open and transparent and to give us the information. And even now I'm calling on Mears to be open and transparent. Tell us how many properties you own. Tell us how many properties you're renting. Tell us the postcodes they're in. And also say, how do you justify buying and renting these properties in areas that are already struggling, in areas that have social high deprivation from both sides of the community? And then why are you surprised that there's social cohesion issues in these areas?
See, I think this comes down to the fact, doesn't it, that fundamentally there's a lack of justice, equality. There's a lack of justice, right? You're amping up problems in deprived areas, right? In terms of rental costs and things like that, where they need it the most. There's a lack of justice in the fact that people sort of see there and say, well, look, I've had, I've been on this waiting list for maybe 10 years. Because a lot of people have been on the waiting list.
They're a single fella or single girl,
You're single fella, single girl. They're sofa surfing. They don't have a house. And yet somebody literally off the boat who may be actually an illegal immigrant is getting preferential treatment. I mean, there's a lack of justice about that. Now, you'd said that you'd seen a document. Can you tell that told you a lot of this stuff? What document was that? And
this was an email from Mears. Okay, an attachment was a list of the number of hotels they had at that time.
Sure.
The number of individuals was in those hotels.
Sure.
And the breakdown of each postcode and hotels. So the only thing it would give you a postcode.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the document was a list. I think those figures were 2,200 at the time of those who were in the community. Yeah. Remember, it's a year and a half ago, this document.
Okay.
And it had a postcode.
So that's 2023 then?
Roughly speaking, in regards to. And in that document, it had a list of all the postcodes that they're housing people in.
Sure.
Okay. It doesn't say the number of houses. It just says under the bracket, and it says in the email, of housing, HMOs and flats.
Okay.
And it was very clear. I mean, it's scary. And the reason why I haven't released this document in regards to saying which postcodes, because I'm not here to inflame things.
Yeah.
I'm here to warn that this is going to continue to be an issue if the Home Office, if Mears and politicians don't listen to the communities who are struggling, who are already struggling before Mears ever existed.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the impact that they're having. But more importantly, it's not fair.
Yeah.
Like I on a daily basis, I have the privilege to work in South Belfast and also be a councillor for Lisburn South. See, when you're having to say to people who are in desperate need, there's no housing for you, yet they see a group like Mears come in and buy a property and then house someone just off the boat. And then you wonder why there's resentment. And there shouldn't be resentment, but there is resentment because people are honest. People are struggling. And I'm going to speak up for those people, whether or not it's perceived as being the right thing to do. Because sadly, for so many people, is they look at the impact that some people have went through in regards to asylum seekers, but they don't want to look at the impact of their own communities that they represent, that they're meant to serve. And I won't do that. I won't turn my back on my community.
So, what you're saying is that we're in a situation where there is injustice being perpetrated by a
policy.
By a policy.
A Home Office policy.
A Home Office policy.
That I believe, yeah.
The Home Office policy that is creating an inequality. You are talking about a community that is under deprivation, already struggling.
Communities.
Yeah, communities.
From both sides.
From both sides. And we're finding that there's an issue. So you're saying that what that is creating is that's creating resentment. And resentment invariably can spill over into stuff that we don't want.
Which
nobody
is wrong.
Wants.
Absolutely wrong.
And nobody wants.
Absolutely. But you have to happen in England.
Yeah.
There's sort of hotels.
Yeah.
Seriously, in regards to and
the Republic of Ireland too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not going to listen to the concerns of the community, sadly, other ones will.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a cry for my community, and I'm going to make a cry for the nationalist community as well, because sadly, their politicians are abandoning them in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
At the end of the day, their areas are suffering as well. And all I'm asking for, if they've nothing to hide, I'm asking for a full inquiry in regards to this policy. Also to ask simple questions that many local families have been impacted by this policy over the last 4 or 5 years. And secondly, look at the geographical spread of these properties that have been bought and rented, and who in their right mind thought areas of high deprivation, you know what, well, let them deal with the impact that immigration has in Northern Ireland. That's why whenever you hear the radio, they talk about, overall immigration is not that bad. Yeah, some areas in Northern Ireland, the only time you'll see immigration issues if you're going to meet a doctor or a nurse who are doing a great job. But if you're in South Belfast, you're facing this on a daily basis.
Well, not on the Malone Road.
Not well.
Mears aren't buying.
Well, maybe you get the delivery or something. You might. I don't know.
No, they're not buying up the mansions on the Malone Road.
Postcodes of high deprivation from both sides of the community.
Yeah. So
and as while I said, the figures I have over 85% in postcode areas of high deprivation.
Yeah.
That's just not right. And see if I'm wrong, and see if things have changed.
Release the information.
Release the information.
So, Paul, the thing is, in your experience, right? Because this leads to a lot of things, right? I'd like to also talk about the impact that you experience as you work in on the coal face in working class communities. But before we do, is it your experience that working class communities are overwhelmingly racist?
No. They're overwhelmingly struggling.
Yes. Now, have they welcomed migrants and immigrants over the years without issue?
Without migrants, immigrants coming here, our health service would have been.
Yeah.
And we worse than it is. And I mean this with all due respect. Why you have an individual there from across the world who, whatever reason, wants to be racist in regards that. And again, it's an easy trope to say, oh, you're right wing and you're racist, because that means you don't have to talk about the issues that your community are suffering. Yeah. You shut it down, and I can tell you, shutting down people's fears doesn't take it away. It just intensifies it. And I'm worried that if we don't listen to the impact that I believe. And this is just one of many issues that are affecting my community. Yeah. There's education underachievement, there's health inequalities, but these are things that we are working towards and have delivered a lot in my community. But in regards to this issue, nobody on the press do not want, and if I'm wrong, I'm the first one to, but in regards to how can you have a policy, and see if it's an issue about, that's where the houses are cheaper. So you purposely target areas that you know are struggling as a result of the Troubles, and you thought, you know what, we'll buy these properties that are in great demand to house the immigrants, but don't worry, there won't be any impact because somebody's daughter has been asked to leave our property, and next week or a month's time you see somebody else coming here from South Sudan or wherever it is, and you don't think, and to make it worse, we had a lovely nurse in our office, was it a year ago before all this broke, and she said she was so proud to go through the British citizenship.
Yeah.
And she says, but her biggest fear was, because she's seen it coming, she says, see when all this breaks, people don't know who's here illegally and who's not. Yeah. And it shouldn't be an issue that way.
Oh.
But at the end of the day, she was worried that somehow because of her skin colour, which is wrong, And I mean this, we've always had a very open, good immigration policy. But you can't have an open border. See, whenever I hear people in Belfast saying immigrants are welcome here, welcome where? Are you taking them into your own home? You live in rural areas, or they live beside you?
Yeah.
No. They're welcome in the areas that you're not in, but you can feel good. You can virtue signal in regards to this.
It's easy.
This is a crisis.
It's easy
and
to...
if people won't listen to this, Nathan, it's going to get worse.
It's easy to tweet from suburbia.
That is indeed.
And I think you're right, Paul. There's a dynamic here that I think it's funny what you'd said there too. There are people like that nurse went through the immigration process legally,
Proud of her citizenship.
proud of the citizenship, and like
Lovely woman.
I think about my wife too. You know, she's American. The struggle, and you know the struggle we had. It took her a year to get over. First year of our marriage, cost about 20 grand to get her over, and the process.
That was just your food bills.
Yeah, that's right. the hoops that we had to go through.
No, it's horrendous.
And yet, we think about people who are coming over on the boat and they're getting everything provided for. My wife had to pay into the NHS. I needed to earn a certain amount of money to ensure that I could support her. But none of this is being applied.
But you'll notice that I've targeted my concerns in the Home Office policy and Mears policy. I'm not about the individual.
No, and neither am I.
I mean, if you're going to send a message that everyone is welcome here, don't be surprised if everyone tries to come.
Yes.
Okay. The question I have from these same politicians you're saying this, have you even looked at the impact? Have you looked at your communities? And then what will happen is it'll be the government's fault. Mm-hmm. It'll be Storm's fault. But we all know the main reason why this is having an impact is because the borders aren't secure. The numbers coming in are massive. And also in regards to the intensity, in regards to where they're being placed, is having the massive burden that we have seen in Portadown. HMOs is a major issue here, and that's something that Johnny Buckley's been fighting. But these are issues that aren't going to go away, despite the media and some political parties trying to hope and wish it goes away.
Can you tell me, from your own experience, what is it like on the coal face as you listen to people who cannot get a house? How are people feeling right now?
On a daily basis, especially in our office in Sandy Road, but also, and we represent all South Belfast.
Yeah, so it's not just...
But also as a local councillor as well, as you imagine somebody who's lived in their area all their life. Their daughter's now 19, 20, got a child, can't get a local home. I mean, seriously, in regards to... There's a lot of reasons for that, and it's not just the immigration issue.
No.
But this is having a massive impact. And then you're talking to these individuals, they're crying in front of you because they don't know where to turn. And then you rely heavily on the private rental sector to meet you through until you finally got somewhere, your houses are built. And you're taking that away as well. And then sadly, the perception is people are being taken by the hand and being given these properties. Of course, until they're made legal and then they're asked to leave. I'm trying to get it. You can understand why any sensible individual, and when I say local people, there's people who came here from Poland, from Lithuania 20 years ago. Their daughters now, sons are looking houses. So when I say local people, I'm talking about people who are desperate to be housed. What do you think their impact's going to be? I mean, this chronic in regards to the issues. Like, we had a position where the Housing Executive actually put an advert out there asking landlords to come forward. They were struggling to get landlords. So it's like, whenever you've got such a mix, and again, the question I asked, and if Mears Group asked them, did public money buy all these houses? Who owns these properties? Is it the Home Office? Is it Mears? What's going to happen to all these properties after all this, hopefully, immigration issues sorted? Will local families get them?
Yeah.
Or is this in your portfolio? There's so many questions that I believe an inquiry, and it could be Mears, there's probably other charities in the UK are doing as well, but I believe there needs to be a full investigation. First of all, does the policy work? What's the impact of the policy? And secondly, was there a clear targeting of areas of high deprivation in regards to who was going to deliver this policy? I don't think that's a lot to ask, and sadly the media won't help me ask that question.
Yeah. Which is interesting, isn't it?
Well, if it was any other sector in Northern Ireland that was suffering this way, Nolan, I'm sorry to use Nolan, but biggest show in the country, and Stephen runs a lot of great campaigns. But in regards to these issues, I mean, deafening silence in regards to the media. Like I spoke, TV News, Nolan researcher, reporters in Belfast Telegraph newsletter. I've spoken to them all.
I see you tagging all of these.
All my posts.
You're tagging them in it all the time, and yet it's not being covered. And
and to be fair to GB News, they do run the story, but I've given them the information I have in regards to. But they're more of an England based. I understand that in regards to. But the reason I'm raising this here is my gut feeling is this is just being replicated in a massive, bigger volume in the UK as well. And, but again, when somebody doesn't want to look at it, it's not because they don't know the answer. It's because I think a lot of times they don't want to find the answer.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of...
And this is not about the individual.
No, this is not.
I have a major issue in regards to Home Office policy. Yeah. And this idea that somebody just got on a boat and all of a sudden, in regards to... I mean, and again, out of American, in regards to like Trump's sort of how he can deal with border issues, but that's not the point. My main issue, if you've got a policy that I believe is having this massive impact, why would you not review it?
Well, the thing is, right, we've talked about this. Do we blame the landlords? No, they're taking the incentive. Do we blame the immigrants? No, they're taking the incentive.
Yeah.
The issue isn't the landlords, not the immigrant. It is fundamentally the policy directed by Parliament.
And the last thing I'll say, and it's my thought to all this, and I said this to the Mayor representative, to build somebody up, you shouldn't have to knock somebody down. And if any policy does that, it's wrong. My question is, why are we not looking to see how many people it has knocked down?
So, we'll maybe move on, because I think we don't have a lot of time left.
No, we've heard that well.
But maybe it would be something that would be good just to say in terms of maybe just talking just generally. Putting the immigration issue aside, because I think that is probably the biggest issue facing the loyalist community. Well,
communities. I don't like this idea.
Working class
areas.
Working class areas. But outside that, what do you think are the big issues that are facing loyalist and Republican working class areas? One
of the biggest issues is educational underachievement.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough, a big shout out for Resurgam Development Trust, a massive community enterprise, social enterprise in Lisburn, say Lisburn, but they help right across Northern Ireland. And I remember years ago, whenever I was on the Public Health Agency and Edwin was Minister, Edwin Pitts was Minister, and they came to us and said there's massive issues in young boys and loyalist working class areas. And as a result of that, we were able to get funding to do a research paper that was just damning in regards to the difficulties. And as a result of that as well, we've been able to put a lot of money into early intervention in regards to supporting our schools. So I got this building block. You get in early in regards to education, the outcomes are greater. And I would shout out for Paul Gibbon. I know is unbelievable in regards to changes, the investment he's trying to pump into education throughout Northern Ireland and also in these areas that need reached. But that's the first thing in regards to. There's also, I think, as well, there's an issue of being proud of your communities.
Cultural confidence?
Yeah. I mean, this we've all, whenever, put it this way, we've got Sinn Féin representatives who can go to every Easter Rising event we're going. And it's just seen as the norm.
Yeah.
Speak at...
But it's not even just an Easter Rising.
But I'm talking about from a loyalist perspective.
Yeah.
Almost suddenness of, if you say you're a loyalist, somehow you're oh, I can't say that now, just, what do you mean now? Don't go far in that way. And that's, so I think it's almost, we need to build this idea in regards to, we are proud of our communities. I'm lucky enough, like I say, I have a lot of great communities in Lisburn, South, Ballincash, Manor Park, I say, Old Warren and stuff like that, and Hillhall and Saberhill, all these different, in Lisburn as a whole, Ballybean and different like that. And there's been a lot of investment, but that only happened because communities come together and work with politicians. Because politicians can't, like, I can deliver as much money as you want, but if I don't have the organisational skill on the ground to be able to deliver that, and also this idea that I know what my community needs, my job is to try and research and get the funding that my community needs and work with everybody who wants to work with me. And that's been something I've been very successful in. Yeah. And to be fair to you, without the groups like Resurgam, like the community groups, we wouldn't. I'm lucky enough with a lot of new community centres now that have been open over the last few while, which becomes a hub for the community. Yeah. So then we can have the early intervention programmes, we can have the programmes for the elderly. There's so much that's going on out there that isn't talked about. And we'll never meet the media until there's a riot in the street, and all of a sudden
and then
will cover.
demonisation.
Yeah.
Demonisation.
We should be proud of what we have achieved, but sadly, I don't believe loyalism, and especially young loyalists, are allowed to be proud of it.
Well, they're not allowed cultural confidence, and I mean, it's funny, when you look at this year, actually it was a very peaceful 12th. One of the most peaceful.
Despite people trying to make it not.
But if you watch the media narrative, you would have thought it was chaos.
Especially some of those media who are allegedly friends of unionism.
Yeah.
I mean, their headline isn't dog beats man, bites man, it's man bites dog, almost, in regards to... And like, you think... if you ask me, what was the tactic over the last 2 weeks? From my perspective is, they wanted riots in the streets. They wanted confusion. They wanted...
Yeah.
And then you had the open, the world media. But thankfully, loyalism, unionism came together and said, not happening in our watch. And that took a lot of leadership.
Yeah.
It took a lot of leadership on the ground. And to be fair, it took a lot of politicians as well, showing leadership. And I thank all those who are involved. But we know, like, really, we had an issue in Belfast where asbestos has been there for years.
Yes.
But there's only an impact and an issue now. Why? Because we can tag a bonfire. We've got politicians who were happy enough to speak for the last 2 weeks about bonfires. Now all of a sudden there's an issue of a bonfire in the area, and deafening silence. And we all know what this is about. This isn't about dealing with issues. This is about using issues to have a go. And thankfully, and I welcome this, our communities didn't react.
I think it backfired big time, because I think what it did was it brought a lot of the communities together, and people realising, actually, no, we have to stand on our cultural, because this is who we are.
And what a fitting way to finish it all off, when we had the world stage here for the Open. And the best way to finish it, a massive parade celebrating our culture that was enjoyed by so many tourists who came to watch the Gulf.
Yeah.
Not an issue of celebrating our culture. And you know what? It is not wrong to celebrate our culture. But it's amazing how tourism, and I believe I've seen, didn't support. Sorry, our culture. I keep going from a loyalist, as I said, Christian loyalist, I said earlier as a joke. But why do you think certain individuals or enemies go after bands, bonfires and parades? Because for a lot of the things, that's our bedrock. Like, our band culture is amazing. See the quality of our marching bands right across Northern Ireland is immense.
And diverse music styles.
Like, you talk about a lot of the young people who are in these bands, especially from deprived areas.
Yeah.
There's issues in regards to father figures in homes. We all know that in regards to... There's issues sometimes, if you talk to a primary school teacher, discipline and all these issues. The discipline that is brought through band culture, because you have to turn up on time. Yeah. You have to learn your instrument.
That's right.
You have to make sure your uniform's tied in, whatever else. You have to behave on parade. So it's like I keep saying about sporting clubs, church clubs. The much community that goes on without being noticed that's actually helping our young people become hopefully the future adults of tomorrow. But we need to realise that there's still issues in our communities that need to be addressed. But running them down at every opportunity does not help. And I will not do that. That's why best I can. Whenever things are wrong, I'll call it out. But I can tell you, considering, like, whenever I entered politics in 2001, the transformation in Lisburn, I believe in our loyalist working class areas, is immense. That's not because of me. That's because communities said, enough's enough. We need money on housing. We need money in early intervention. We need money in community youth projects. And I've been lucky enough with all our politicians, I say a lot in my own party, to be able to secure that funding. A lot more to be done, but I do believe we have the roadmap in regards to how we can transform. And it's about a partnership of working with communities, not telling communities what they should do.
Yeah. Do you think, and maybe we'll sort of lead off here, how do you think society, especially in government and media, could better understand and respect loyalist, unionist, Protestant identity?
Well, first of all, I think calling names at the start doesn't help.
Yeah.
Recognising they actually have affinity and a right to be here. And also recognising the fact, like the other side of community, they've suffered as a result of the Troubles as well. Mm-hmm. They are part of this conflict, whether we like it or not. We have community leaders here trying to make sure the conflict doesn't continue. But there is the massive disparity. I keep going back to it. We have Sinn Féin leaders at Easter Rising parades. But I went to a Lord's parade last year and I was lambasted in the Irish News. A Lord's parade, lambasted in the Irish News. Now, it's not going to stop me representing my community to stand up for loyalism, stand up for unionism.
And it was twisted.
But it should not even be, it shouldn't even be an issue. But it's almost as if, you know what, if we call you out, then it stops other ones coming forward. And I believe as politicians, especially unionist politicians, we also need to be brave and stand up for our communities.
If a young working class Protestant man or woman came to you today feeling ignored, pressured, or unsure where they fit, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, there's two issues. I would say, first of all, education's a golden build-up. It depends what age they are, to be fair to you. If I was speaking to a parent, I would say, whatever you can, try to make sure education is because it's a thing that changes people's lives. Secondly, in regards to, I also believe in strong faith. To be fair to you, in regards to faith keeps us anchored. Faith in the Lord Jesus Christ also helps us, I believe, gives us a purpose. So whenever you feel down, wherever you're from, whether it's loyalist working class areas, Catholic working class areas, public working class areas, or whether you're in the sleepy suburbs or in rural areas, having that anchor and having that faith, I believe, also can deal with the difficulties that we all face. And anybody that says they haven't faced a difficulty hasn't lived long enough. So in regards to what we can do to help our communities, I believe, first of all, we have to be there for them.
Yeah.
We also have to realise that their concerns are legitimate. And sadly, they also feel their concerns aren't being heard. And our job is to listen. I don't always listen maybe the right way, maybe I've made mistakes in that, but my commitment, as long as I'm in politics, and even when I'm not, is I'm proud of the areas I represent. Hopefully they're proud of me in regards to that, and I will continue to be a voice for them, even though so many sadly don't want me to speak on this issue.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks for your honesty. That there's a lot to process there. There's a lot of things you've made there that I think for a lot of us will be asking the questions, trying to understand there's a lot of people out there will not have heard of Mears. A lot of people out there will not have heard of how and understand the connection between a company that's employed by the housing, the Home Office, and how that's affecting rents today, and also having an impact in vulnerable communities. And there's stuff you've said there about loyalist identity, unionist identity, that I think is very, very valuable. And I think that point as well, what you'd said at the end about faith, Christ is the anchor for individuals, but he's also the anchor for societies and nations. And if we don't have that, we're going to see chaos. And unfortunately, our nation has veered into a position where it's lost its anchor, and we're now seeing a lot of chaos as a result.
And the sad, if you say there's only two genders, if you stand up for the unborn child,
yeah,
now somehow you're demonised, and almost sudden you're the person who's not.
Yeah.
Right. That's how far we've moved away. Yeah. You know, my job is to represent anybody that comes to me, and I try to do that diligently as best I can. But it doesn't mean we can't also raise our concerns in regards to where we're going. And that's why in regards to these issues, too many politicians are quiet. Too politicians don't want to rock the boat. And I understand that because of employment, because of everything. But you notice on the left, they're not quiet.
No.
You notice when it comes to fighting for these issues, they're very loud. I think we also need to have a confidence within ourselves to say, you know what, this is wrong. In regards to the Mears issue, this is wrong. In regards to, I believe sometimes how unionists and loyalist working class areas are demonised, this is wrong. We're going to stand with these communities, and we're going to make sure that they get the support they need in regards to issues. And that's all I can take. I'm only a councillor here. I'm nobody in the scheme of things. But I would like to finish, first of all, to thank all the great groups and individuals I work with in South Belfast and Lisburn. I would also like to shout out to my wonderful family. I haven't even mentioned them yet. I remember one time at election, getting up when I was elected, thanking everybody. And then whenever I came down, it was my daughter or son says, "You forgot to mention Mum." So I don't want to do it this time. Can I thank my wonderful wife, Nicola? And again, I keep saying about, I don't like the word privilege. Another privilege I've had is a wonderful wife and two blessed children. Because whenever I entered politics, my wife didn't say, "Are you out tonight again?" because she knew it meant a lot to me, and she knew I believed I was doing a difference. I couldn't do what I do without the support of my wonderful family and my wife. So shout out to them, who sadly have to listen to a lot of this too at home. They know all about Mears as well, but I am proud of them individually, what they're doing, and also the support that they continue to give me.
Mears in Liverpool.
Well, again, Liverpool is another podcast, to be fair to you. But no, we're a big Liverpool family, and I would like to say, as champion, as league winners, and hopefully future league winners, that'll be another good show we could run.
Well, I think I'd be out of my depth when it comes to football.
Well, I know sport wasn't something that Nathan was a big thing, but anyway to you.
Indeed. But here, Paul, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And thanks for coming
in this endeavour.
Absolutely. And look, we will. We'll process a lot of this stuff, and I think there's a lot of people out there who have heard what you're said, and we'll take a lot of it on board. So, thank you for joining us, and until next time, keep advancing Christ's kingdom in every domain and moving forward with truth.
Amen.